All right. First thing you're gonna want to do is take some kind of cloth, put it over the vise. You don't want the vise bit to mar up the metal, and you only want it to be open around that much. You're just kind of playing with the angle on it a little bit. You're not actually going to be vicing it down. You're not going to be actually crimping it. That's the way you get hard lines, and you don't want that. So you can kind of play with it, put it in the hole. First things first, you're never going to actually put a lot of tension on this. You're going to make sure, A, it's lined up with whatever edge is straight line. So for me, it's on the bottom edge. Always make sure you follow whatever straight line you have or whatever your line's going to be. And from the very beginning, just springboard a little bit. You're going to only put a little bit of tension on here. See, I barely curved it at all. You're not trying to do any fast bending right now. What you're doing is you're creating stress in the metal. You're gonna go up and down. You're just gonna keep going up and down the shaft, however long. Mine's longer than the vise itself, so I have to kind of to play it a little bit. But as you can see here, there's no bend lines yet, but it is bending. It is curving. Like I said, what you're doing here is you're just creating different areas of stress along the metal, and you're gonna do that for as long as you can. Meaning, however, your piece will most likely be bigger than the throat is deep, but that's okay. We'll go over that in a second. So you just keep going back and forth, playing it with it like this. Like I said, what you're doing here is you're trying to make sure that when you do a little bit of harsher bends later, that it has more than one line or one crack to follow. Because essentially, you're making cracks in the steel. I'm just putting a little bit of pressure. Once you feel it start to give a little bit, you stop. At least for now. So once you feel the metal kind of bend a little bit, because you don't want to push down hard, you don't want to have it crease. So far we have this now. We have a slight little indenture, and that's what you want. The hardest part to bend in this fashion by hand is going to be those edges. If you're using 18 or 20 gauge steel, at this point you'll have this shape, and you can actually kind of flex it with your arms, or put it up against the vise, and kind of play it a little bit. Again, you're going to want to do it as little as possible, because the faster you do this, the more crease marks you're going to have. So again, just kind of springboard it, mess with it a little bit, and you can grab it from the sides and try to squish it a little bit. You want to keep trying to do it at different angles or at different points of the metal. You've created a bunch of stress points, and now you want to do that. So now what I usually do, I have a kind of a curvature shape here. You're gonna put it in the vise with the curve facing outward, and you're gonna do the same thing you did before, except instead of doing it towards you the other way, you're doing it that way. So basically, now what you're trying to do is you're trying to curve that outer line in. And this entire time, all I'm doing is putting it a certain depth in there. Right now I'm putting just the tip of the depth in there, just under this part of the vise, so it has leverage just to stay in there. And I'm keeping an eye to make sure I'm not going too fast. Because the faster you go, the more you have to clean up, the more you have to look at a lot of crease lines later. And then you can move up the shaft a little bit more, do the same thing. The middle doesn't tend to bend well in the vise, but that's why you kind of hold it out. That's why when you're using 18 and 20, is because once you make those crease lines on the outer edges, you can curve it by hand. And as like I said, as you're doing this the whole time, kind of play with it, putting it into your arm, see where you are, For me, it's almost good except for the front end. So now we have two options. I can either just kind of smush it with my hand, or I can. But I'm gonna need to make this a little tighter because now we're gonna actually have to bend this inner edge in more than the back edge because my arm is oblong. Your arm may be a little more even than mine. My arm is really skinny at the base and really thick at the top of the arm. I know guys like with your build, or it can be kind of the almost near the same thickness all the way down. So now instead of going straight, you're going to be playing with the angle of going along this way, because you're not trying to bend the whole piece now. You're just trying to bend the where your hand's going to be. And I can even go back up here and pinch the upper area. And this is where the play comes in now. It's almost in the right spot, but my vise won't let me do much more. So now you gotta try custom contouring with your hand. Okay, there we go. We're getting good. And one of the things that I like doing, and mind you, do this very carefully if you ever do this with your hand actually in the vise. You can sometimes have it sit there like that to kind of see what you have going on, or you can just simply put it in the vise. Right now we have to. I'm actually gonna grab my hammer for this next part. What I have now is this. These two tower shapes right here aren't good. You're gonna need to smash that down a little bit. So take a light hammer, preferably a plastic one, or a rubber mallet. And you're just going to run along that edge, and you're going to taper it in, because you're not going to get that edge otherwise to go down. Now I'm hitting it directly on top. But since it's already perched at an angle, I'm kind of swinging from this way, but I'm also hitting down. So you're kind of, the idea is you're trying to do that, where you're curving the edge in. And I'm having it up against the vise right here to kind of keep it stable for the sideways and down. So you don't shape it too fast. You are going to be hammering more down than you are. You're going to make sure you're hitting it at an angle, but more vertical along the actual piece than horizontal. Meaning you're not going to sit there, let's see, and just smash down like that. You're going to kind of want to look at it on the straight line and just perch it a little bit. And again, slower is always better. If you swing harder and faster, you'll miss, you'll have mistakes, and you won't notice what's going wrong. And you can always play with it. If you did a little too much, you can kind of pull it back out again. Now you see it's kind of fitting to my arm a little bit better now. And I just have to put a little bit more tapering on this upper edge. Again, remember with metal and with any cosplay project, less is more. You can always add. You can always take off more, or you can always bend more. You can't always bend or shape less. So before you, if you think you just need a couple more swings before you're done, or a couple more inches in, check first. Just kind of putting it in your arm and go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to need a little bit more there. Because you can always do more, but sometimes you can't go back. So as you're seeing, I'm hitting it down like that, and now it's perfectly shaped to my arm. Now for the final stage, you're going to need some kind of rolled edge or something with a. Let me see here. You're gonna need something like you can just take a ball peen hammer and stick it in the vise. That'll work. Anything with a wide base edge. I'm using a giant bolt for a railway, but you can use almost anything. What you're doing right now is you're gonna take a hammer with a bit like that and a bit like that. It depends on what side you want to use. Now what I'm doing is I'm placing the edge up against the item, and I'm taking this and I'm making sure that I'm not actually hammering it flush on the piece where the metal is hitting the metal. I'm hitting it in the gap where there's air. And what I'm doing is I'm just barely about a centimeter in. Hammering in that gap of air. If you hammer directly, if you have it flat and you're hammering metal on metal, you're going to cut it. So you want to make sure that when you're hammering it like that, that it's tilted up, and that the actual area you're hitting is going to be air, and it's in the area that it's resting on is just the edge. Now what this is going to do is just flaring the edge up. And I am doing it for myself. If you need to see a video about how to do the flaring a little bit better, sorry, there's my phone here. If you need to see how to do the flaring better, I can send you another video. But right now I'm alone, so I can't do much. But what this is doing, you can come back around and you can hammer it down straight onto the edge. Now what you're doing is, instead of the metal on your hand resting on this blade edge here, which no matter how smooth you get, it's going to chafe your hand up, you're now going to be having it on this edge. It's the curvature out, and having it on my wrist is actually very comfortable. I mean, this is kind of still a little rough, but moving it around my wrist in there, it's nice and smooth. I can roll my wrist out without feeling like it's cutting me. Yeah, I'm gonna wear a long sleeve shirt. It's gonna go along this anyway, but even with padding, if you don't do that, as it's resting down like this, and it's jamming on your wrist all day, if you don't flare that edge at least a little bit, it's going to hurt. And once you get the edge flared a little bit, you can then go back through and you can hammer it down now. With a flat edge of a hammer to make it more pronounced. It's up to you. Like I said, before you wear anything, take your hand along the inside edge. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you're not going to get hurt. Do it slowly first, so you don't actually cut your hand if there's something there. You want to do it slowly. You want to have your hand go on the inside and the out, just to make sure that you have no burrs or anything that came out during the project. And put your wrist in, and just kind of feel around now. And the most important thing is near the end, on the edge there, you want to come up a little bit into the piece, a little bit, so you have a triangle shape instead of just coming straight across. That'll keep that edge from digging into your wrist as well. So I'm trying to get you a good angle on that. So in the end of the project, my piece looks like this. And it's usually smarter, I prefer to do it with this, but I can fix it later, to put your holes in first with pieces like this. With shoulder pieces, the joints up near the top, you want to wait to put those joints in, because when you shape it, it sometimes moves around. But with a Vambrace, you definitely want to at least put your two pilot holes. Most likely for this Vambrace, I just used either one or two belts. One belt would be right here. Two belts would be probably right about here and here. Right. I hope this helps. Go ahead and give me any questions. I'm not sure how good the video. I'm going to check the video quality now. I hope you enjoyed.